Hey, you're listening to The Growth Signal. My name is Alyssa Nolte,
And I'm Chris Hood.
and we're going to get right into it. Chris, what is your hot take?
What is my hot take? Well, I just wrote a piece just a couple of days ago looking at this thing coming out called agentic enterprise. And basically, I argue that one, uh, s- uh, organizations today are already agentic by human nature. And two, systems are not autonomous and they probably won't ever be. And so, this concept of agentic enterprises is actually dehumanizing individuals and organizations that are in the business to serve people and customers.
I'm really, really excited to talk about this because I feel like there is a lot of misunderstanding about what is and isn't possible when it comes to agentic AI. I was actually like this close to spending $20,000 last night. I kid you not, because I was scrolling on my TikTok feed and my husband pulled up this video of this home robot, a fully autonomous agentic home robot that would do your dishes and do your laundry and walk around your house and do all of these things. And I was like, sold. If I never have to wash another dish again and it's just going to cost me $500 a month in perpetuity, fine, whatever. I will do it. But then I started to do a little more research and to watch videos about this little robot. And there's a nice little fine print that says for anything that your robot can't do autonomously, one of our engineers will remote in and using the camera eyeballs complete the task via VR. And so it goes to your point that you just said, like, nothing really is autonomous. Everything is kind of an over promise, under deliver kind of situation. And like treating me as like just a part of the product where it's okay if a person just looks into my house while I'm not aware.
Yeah, it's pretty simple. Humans have autonomy, systems do not. And despite all of the marketing hype that is out there, systems are not autonomous today. And I've done substantial research in this. I've got a framework for validating autonomy. And so, like, as an example, the first thing that most people will point to is, well, we have autonomous vehicles. No, we have self driving vehicles that have been programmed to go where they need to go, and marketing has determined them to be autonomous. Autonomous is one of these marketing overly hyped words. And the problem with that is that now that we've applied them to like even agents, they're all scripted, every single one of them. It doesn't matter. And I kind of have simplified this into, well, if you have a prompt, whatever that prompt might be, then it can't be autonomous because the system hasn't made its own decisions. Then people say, well, they're self-governing. They can make a decision. You've programmed them to make a response based on a goal that you have. So once again, it can't be autonomous. So it's a huge problem. But compound that with the fact that a lot of people think that agentic AI means something to do with agents, which it doesn't. Then we get increasingly more confusion. So you've got this term agentic, and you've got a technology that is not autonomous, and you're conflating it with agents. It creates a whole lot of messy discourse.
And I think you hit the nail on the head here that autonomy is a really good word that marketing has invented for what is really really good automation, right? It can feel autonomous. It can feel like it's having its own agency and autonomy and the freedom to make decisions. And yet it can't truly be autonomous because it has to have guardrails in place and it has to have prompts and triggers and things that have this automation go and within the limits of which we are setting it. Because if these agents were truly autonomous, you could just say, okay, here's all the access to all the software that you'll need in my business, just like you would give a new employee that you onboarded, and it could go and explore and decide what matters and what doesn't, and what's missing and what isn't, and then what it should do next. But in reality, you have to do a lot of for agentic, and I'm using quotes here, for agentic AI to work, you have to really do a lot of hard foundational work to set up the systems in place so that the triggers work, so that the automations run, so that the outcomes that you're trying to get happen. and that just doesn't happen autonomously.
Yeah, and kind of to put this in perspective, if we think about traditional intelligence, thought process, decision making types of approaches, and to what you're just talking about here, usually we think about things like, okay, well, it's scripted, so I go through a motion of what you've told me to go. Then we reach some sort of adaptive level, which means that you provide me with information, but I can kind of adapt to what makes the most sense. After that, we get to what we call predictive. And predictive is that based on what you're telling me and based on my personal experiences, I can begin to look forward ahead and predict what I might need to do because I have a better understanding of, what these scenarios are. And so to your point, like if I go to a new job and I have experience in a certain role, I can sit down and I can look at materials and I can start to predict what I might need to do because I've had that experience. Now, think about this from a car perspective, an autonomous self-driving car. Well, at what point in time would you like your car to make a prediction about what it can and can't do for you? No one on the planet is going to allow their car to say, well, you know what? I think we might need to make a left hand turn here. Yeah, sure. Let's make a left hand turn. No, there is no left hand turn to make here. So that kind of prediction has to be governed. It has to be regulated. And because there is that regulation about what you can and cannot do, especially in a car, well, then we haven't even reached the next level of decision making, let alone reach some level of autonomy.
It's funny that you give that example. When I was first, like, driving on my own, I had one of those, like, Garmin GPS things, and I was in an unfamiliar city, and I must not have, like, updated it recently enough or something because you used to have to, for you youngins out there, plug in this GPS thing into your computer and, like, run an update, so that it had the most updated maps, and I was driving across a bridge, like, a really long bridge across a big river, and it was like, "Turn left," and I'm like, "I'm literally in the middle of a bridge." And if I would have just blindly followed the auto navigation system, the GPS system, I would have literally been in the river. But because I was in a situation where I could act autonomously, I could make the decision that, you know what, I'm gonna turn left after the bridge, after we're not over water anymore.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's a great example. And, we've seen stories now of self driving cars that get into these kind of perpetual loops and kind of crash out. Driver gets stuck in the car going around a parking lot for a couple of hours. There's been some really interesting stories. But, again, if we kind of go back to this concept of, Salesforce and Deloitte has now come out with the agentic enterprise. I mean, it's really a misunderstanding of what agentic is foundationally. And as I've said, is you're applying a word that doesn't mean what you think it means to an enterprise. There's no difference than if I was to call it a banana enterprise. They're not related, right? Um, and it's all really designed around hyping up this concept where in doing so, you really are discounting the individuals, the people within your organization that already do have autonomy, that already have agency, and can already help you be successful. And if our future is one designed by, well, it's only going to be systems and humans are going to be pressing buttons. Again, I use this example in the piece I wrote. Well, that reminds me of George Jetson. Just sitting there and pressing a button and letting things happen.
But, like, okay, if this wouldn't be a hot take show if I didn't maybe take a little bit of a counter here. So I personally think that we have to get to some point of scale with the amount of work that people are being asked to do and the amount of money that they're being paid to do it. So, is there not a happy medium between having really great systems, having really great foundational data work, having something that is automatable and lets us as people do the people work and lets the robots do the robot work, but maybe we just have to be clear and honest about what it is and not pretend like it's some magic solution that we're gonna wave our wands and suddenly we all, don't have to work anymore because the robots do all of our jobs.
I mean, so there's two parts in there, and I'll just say, being asked to do more and getting paid less is a leadership and a cultural problem. That's an organizational problem. It has nothing to do with technology. That's a cop out for any organization out there saying, "Oh well, I just need someone to take offload this stuff, and I don't want to hire more people to do it, and I'm going to pay you less to do it at the same time, like, and fire a whole bunch of people because now I know agents can take over the world and do it
Right.
for us, right? That's just poor leadership. And any CEO out there talking about this is an idiot. That's my hot take. Now,
Yeah.
with that being said, I do agree that there is a substantial amount of work that is out there that one doesn't need to be done by a human. And two, yes, we should be able to offload things so that you are spending more time with the customers or with things that matter within your organization. So things like reports, things like uh, you know. uh, But see, here's an example. I argue that most organizations have so many meetings that people can't get anything done. Stop having meetings. Like, that's
Yeah.
on you. That's your culture driving meetings. And no amount of technology is going to decrease the amount of meetings that you have. Unfortunately, the amount of automation that you have just means that you're going to have more time for meetings. And that's a problem. That, right? So you've got to think about how you can strategically use the technology to improve the right things within the organization so that you can free up time to have the right conversations within the organization. Both of those are substantial problems, whether it's technology or not. Too many meetings, too many busy tasks, and we're not hiring more people to help, accommodate some of that. So yeah, there's kind of both sides. Um, and I think we just have to get a little smarter about what that is.
I'm glad too that you bring up the concept of like, hey, we're gonna lay off a whole bunch of people in the name of like agentic AI because we're recording this on October 30th and it's gonna come out a little bit later. But isn't that one of the reasons that Amazon gave for the layoff that they just did this last week of like 14,000 people? Was part of it was the ability to automate a lot of those jobs via agentic AI.
Yeah, yeah. Look, a lot of people are being laid off due to technology, AI across the board. Call it whatever you want to call it. AI is coming in and automating various tasks, and as a result, people are losing their jobs. And there's a huge fear out there about job loss in general. Now, I have argued that AI is going to impact middle management more than any other area. And that is because at some point in time, the executive leadership is not going to give up their jobs. They're not going to fire themselves.
Right.
And it's going to be cheaper to hire entry level employees and pair them with some sort of AI tool that will allow them to do the same job as a middle manager. And most middle managers are doing nothing more than analyzing, evaluating, right? They're not doing the hands on day to day operational type of work. And so AI can easily facilitate a lot of that and analysis and again middle tier type of operational function. So if we start to lose middle management, and then eventually, the entry level employees, new college grads and stuff are going to start finding places. But what that does to the organization, what that does to our society more broadly is you lose the middle class, then you lose a big chunk of what makes society operational. And so the way we are looking at this is that it could have a devastating impact on jobs and careers, not because it is necessarily directly, removing a bunch of jobs, but at the pace by which it's doing it is alarming, right? We cannot create, it's a fallacy to think that AI is going to create enough new jobs, net new jobs or replacement jobs to hire all the people being let go due to automation. And so the it's the scale and speed by which this is happening which is concerning. In the dot com, even in mobile technology eras, oh, we no longer need this role, but we do need this role. It was almost a one for one swap, or even 1 to 2. And now it's, zero. And that's, again, it's very, very concerning.
So let's put our future hats on, our futurist hats on for a second. Maybe make a prediction. Do you think that AI is eventually people are gonna come to their senses and they're gonna be truly disappointed with what it was? Something that comes to mind is like the original. Do you remember those Google glasses that they were selling for a while with little cameras on them?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like everyone was so excited about it. We were all trying to get our hands on them and then we were all disappointed and then they disappeared. They're kind of coming back now, I feel like, but they disappeared from the zeitgeist for a little bit. Do you think it's going to surprise us and they're going to, deliver on all these promises that they're making? Or do you think it's gonna fall somewhere in the middle where people will finally come to their senses about what agentic AI is and isn't, and maybe start, using that proper terminology and having realistic, proper expectations?
Well, if you're familiar with kind of this hype cycle, type of approach, we are still pretty high up on the hype. So we've probably got a, 2026, mid 2026, we'll probably start coming down into that kind of disillusionment. I've watched, I wrote my first book and it was all about the hype. And I released that in January of this year. And over the course of 2025, I was the only one saying that this is problem. And now I'm seeing a lot more people coming, to the realization. So I think we're starting to trend downward, but we still have a long way to go within the hype of it all. Um, and so, yeah, I do think that eventually people are going to start to wake up and realize what these technologies can and can't do. More AI literacy will get out there, a better understanding of terms like what agentic AI is and what it isn't. That educational process will, improve. I've also argued that in the next 5 years, we won't be talking about AI anymore. It's just going to be another technology that is part of our lives, similar to like no one talks about mobile devices anymore.
Right.
No one's talking about, hey, I've got the best 5 tips for you to build your own website. Like no one's doing that on LinkedIn. These things will eventually pan out and be embedded. What we'll find out is if things like the amount of employees that an organization needs to operate these things goes up or down, whether or not we're going to be able to sustain ourselves. We're going to recognize that in the next 5 years. Um, but yeah, I think technology wise, we'll get better educated. Definitions will be better determined. Regulations, are going to be more in place. And then whether or not we are still in existence from an enterprise perspective in the next 5 years, that will all be determined.
As we kind of move into the future, what is the one thing that, like, if you could paint it on a billboard for all of these executives who are trying to just implement AI because we have to, what would be the one thing you think that they're missing? What's their blind spot?
They have no idea what their customer base is.
Oh, yes. Oh my goodness. It's amazing to me the number of people who are whipping out this AI and having it talk to their customers and not really understanding who their customers are or what they care about or how they want to be interacted with.
That's right.
And as you're, I always joke with people like we hire these celebrities, we go through all these testing, we pay millions of dollars to have a brand ambassador, and then we whip up a robot brand ambassador that nobody's tested, nobody's thought about, and we just put it out there and hope for the best. And yet, this is the first touch point for a lot of our customers for the first time they touch our brand, and we haven't even really thought it through.
Yeah, take that to the next level. You're not even giving the customer an option. You're forcing it upon them.
Yeah.
And so I use, if you go to Target or a grocery store, checkout lines, there's self checkout and there's still aisles where somebody will help you. I, as the consumer, get to pick which one I want to use. And in a lot of these cases, you're not providing me that option. Now we are seeing some differentiation, like Discover Card says you can talk to a real human. And so you call them up. Their whole advertising campaign is on this. Their market cap is increasing on a day to day basis because they have clearly stated you can talk to human first. And the flip side is, I go to Taco Bell and I have to go and engage with some sort of technology. There is no option to communicate with a real person versus something like a Chick-fil-A where they're there ready to welcome you. In both cases, I would argue like, okay, add a kiosk at Chick-fil-A, but still keep it human. Or at Taco Bell, you have the kiosk, but offer the option to still go up and talk to a person. Because of these lack of options and the forcing of AI upon us, that is the part where consumers are pushing back. They do not like it. They want their options and choices. And so Taco Bell is decreasing in value because people are opting to go to other places. And when you do not have that ability to hand off to a human, I mean, another report that came out said 77% of people prefer to call up and talk to a human over any other type of AI system. And so you've got to create these options for people. And to the original point, as you said and I said, you've got to understand what your customer actually wants, who they are, what their problems are, solve for those problems. That's your starting point. You don't start with, hey, I want to build some AI system and then we'll figure out how our consumers are going to use it. You start with, here's what our consumers are asking for, here's the problems that they have. How could we potentially solve that problem? And then maybe AI could help us solve that problem. But I'll tell
Right.
you, in most cases, other technologies are out there that will help you solve those problems, not AI.
Well, and it's the difference of human first innovation rather than AI first or tech first innovation. And I think a lot of us are far too quick to forget the humanity of our work and the things that we're trying to accomplish for the sake of efficiency and scale and bottom line and profits and all of those things that are important, right? We're all here to run businesses. But if you want to deliver on customer centricity at any level, you have to design with customer in mind, supported by AI, supported by tools, supported by process, rather than process led or tech led.
Yeah, exactly. And, customer centricity is very hard for people. I mean, I've taught this for decades, and it's amazing how many organizations you go into and they'll say, "Yeah, we're customer centric," and then when you deep dive into it, you realize they really aren't. And when you start to push them towards, well, make this change or make this change, they're like, oh, we just don't do that. Well, then you
Yeah.
aren't customer centric and you never will be. You are CEO centric or you're profit centric, without the realization that without your customers, you have no profit. Without your customers, you have no business. Without the customers, you have no product to sell. So it's a mindset, and the people who can live in that mindset are always going to be more successful.
I had someone on the show once who, and this could be an entire another podcast episode. But I had someone on the show once who said there's one question you have to ask to determine if you are really truly customer centric versus like operation centric. If I say to you, okay, so you say you're customer centric, tell me one decision that you made that was purely for the benefit of the customer that cost you something somewhere else in the business, whether it be your bottom line, your operations, your team, whatever it was. Tell me what you gave up operationally for the sake of the customer. And usually it's like deer in the headlights because they say customer centric because it's the right answer, quote unquote, the PR friendly answer. Nobody wants to say, you know what, we serve customers, but we care about you so much less than we care about making money. And so you're a means to an end, right? But
Yeah.
the right answer is to be customer centric.
Yeah, it's a fabulous question because, even if you put it in perspective, if you said something like, our company was wrong, I've picked on Taco Bell, but so we'll use Taco Bell, we were wrong, so we are going to give everybody free tacos all day this Tuesday, right? Like that's giving back.
Right. Yeah.
My view of customer centricity also though, it goes so much deeper. It's things like during the interview process for non-customer facing roles, do you ask questions about how their job will impact the customer? Like I guarantee you they don't. Like no
Yeah.
one is sitting there and interviewing an engineer and asking the engineer, like, how do you think your role as an engineer directly impacts our customer on a daily basis? Like that question is non-existent. I've read press releases which are been designed by legal teams and PR strategists across the globe, and you can read them and they delegate the customer to like the bottom part of the press release instead of the very first thing. So when you've got a press release that says, to our employees, we'll continue to support you. To our customers, we're listening. Well, that alone shows me you're not customer centric. That's
Right.
employee centric. You care more about your employees than you do about your customers, right? Just based on the order of language, I can tell if you are truly customer centric or not. And these types of insights again goes back to if you were focused on something like an agentic enterprise, which makes no sense, either taxonomy wise or technical wise. If that's your focus, then your focus is not on your customer and your focus is not on your business, and your focus is not on humans. It is on profit.
Chris, considering all the people that you know or aspire to know, who else is out there? Who else should we be listening to?
Oh, a good friend of mine, Gary Mara, Marra, Gary. He's got a podcast. I would go try to find him and track him down. He's on LinkedIn, or you can reach out to me and I'll be happy to make an introduction. Good, insightful conversations about marketing and customer centric approaches and things like that. Yep.
And if someone is really connecting with you, they wanna learn more, they wanna talk about agentic AI, they wanna throw down about agentic AI, whatever it may be, where can they find you online?
Oh man, I would welcome that. Like if you disagree with me, like totally reach out.
Yeah.
So you can find me at my website, chrishood.com, CHRISHOOD.com. And there you can find my podcast and my blog, a lot of thought leadership, several frameworks on agentic and autonomy that are there. All my social media profiles, my books, everything right there, chrishood.com.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for coming on the Girl Signal. This was a invigorating conversation.
Thanks so much.